Let's presume in our mythical journey here that we've sold the business has officially sold. Just
Okay.
maybe a couple comments before we get into some common mistakes here and wrap this up.
Yeah.
What are some things that you think people should be thinking about even before they buy a business, about sort of post-acquisition and making sure they execute so this successful business that they are buying remains successful?
Mm-hmm. Um, Number one, when you buy it, I want you already thinking about your exit. Okay. And, when you buy from Adam, talk to him about what the exit's going to look like. Right. And, it's out there, but the thing is I never buy a business. I never start a business without having some context for it, or some plan that I want to follow in terms of, hey, I'm going to do this with it, and then eventually I'll sell it. Because what you're doing is building something of value. Okay. And the next thing is, I've already said it, but build up cash. Don't just start draining the company of cash. And I think that, those two things will tee you off on the right foot. But after that, it's like, okay, we close. First thing I'm going to do is have an all hands meeting and talk to everybody in the company and explain to them what has happened. And I go in there usually pretty enthusiastically, and I talk about why I love the business and how important they are as employees. They're the infrastructure, by the way, right? They are the employees. And then I always talk about the vision for the company. Okay. And as much as you can communicate that, I was talking to my chief of staff, Chelsea Wood, the other day, and she said, make the, when you're communicating to the employees, make sure they feel that the acquisition is happening with them, not to them. Okay. And as much as you can try to capture that, that's what you really want to do. So step one, employees, and on the first day. Step two, customers. I always do customers. Okay. You tell the employees first, only because if the customers then turn around and call the employees, you're screwed. It's the only reason you tell them first, and you can round them up real fast and get it done. Call the customers. Look at the 20% of customers that bring in 80% of the revenue. Schedule meetings with all of them. Okay. Assuming, right? It's the type of business that works for. The day you close, your phone's going to be ringing off the hook with the suppliers. Okay. Tell them, not today. I'm talking to you a couple of weeks out. Right now, I'm focused on my people and my customers. Okay. And they're all wanting to, all the suppliers are wanting to meet you. So after that, you really want to come up with a 90-day plan, just in terms of, people, processes, systems, all those kinds of stuff. So, you really want to focus on the humans. You want to focus on the cash. You want to focus on the processes, and any kind of early wins, that kind of stand out as something you want to hit.
Yeah, I like to give people tell them to get a notebook, or give them a notebook and say, all your ideas that you think of in the next 90 days, write them down in here.
Yeah.
Because half or more of your ideas, you're going to realize over these first 90 days weren't very good ideas, because you didn't understand the business until you've gotten into the business and really understood it and worked on a smooth transition with the owner. Because the last thing you should be thinking about doing when you're buying a successful business with employees and customers and vendors and nice cash flow is making changes. You're buying it for a reason.
Yeah, no,
I'm not saying changes aren't needed, but not in the first 30, 60 days.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's also the deep, there's this default answer that's out there, don't change anything for 12 months. Right. And I don't really agree with that. In other words, what I would say is this: I've seen people buy companies and move in and just start making drastic changes right away. Okay. I've actually seen it twice. That's it. Okay. And the first person created amazing value. Amazing. I mean, it was almost like a house that needed to be completely redone, and they had to get it a little messy before they fixed it. Okay. And it wasn't even a turnaround, but it worked. Right. And the second one completely screwed up the business and completely wrecked everything, including, now they had a personally guaranteed bank loan that they had to pay with no money coming in. I mean, it was terrible. It was terrible. So I think the thing is if there's things, I like implementing change about month 3 or month 4, and nothing big, but just people do things one way because they've always done it, and like, not, that's where you really,
Yeah.
I think you can start to streamline things without like major overhaul, right? But just
Yeah.
like, you're doing it in an asinine way. We're going to do it this way. And employees in that period, they really want to figure out what they can do to work well with you. That's true. They just do.
So we have a couple of questions that I'm going to throw in together. They're semi-related, but it's sort of after the acquisition or part of the first one is, and let you give the answers. Is it common to take over some of the seller's loans after closing, i.e. machinery, tools, trucks, etc.? And the second question is there a typical or average percentage of loss in sales, customers, or other due to the changing over that you've seen that you should sort of model and expect in your forecast?
Okay, so it's one of these things where never, ever, ever give a bank a forecast that shows revenue going down. There's a difference between the one the bank wants to see, which is the business plan, and what really happens, okay? Yep. I never buy a company without stress testing it, okay? You got to stress test it. And more often than not, what I find is when I stress test the P&L, I actually get more comfortable with buying it. Like, it usually needs to decline a pretty massive amount before you're in a rough spot, okay? I make a ton of mistakes and I talk about them openly. And one of them is every single time I've bought a company, I think this is true, revenue has gone down every single time the year following. Okay, maybe it's because the seller's kind of juicing things a little bit. Maybe like there needs to be reinvestment somewhere. Maybe I'm just not as good. Maybe the market kind of peaked out on a little bit of a cycle. It usually kind of trends down like 5 to 10% after I buy it. Okay, that's just my batting average, and it's not statistically significant, by the way. I've done it 7 times. And it's just a transition that needs to happen, but it's usually not something that it's never been something that's detrimental. Okay, like it's just part of normal business operations, right? Like if you buy a house, the value might go down a little bit, but at the end of the day, really, do you care? Because it's going to go up also while you live in it. It's kind of the same approach. Like it just goes up and down. What was the first question? What was the first part of that?
The common to take over some of the seller's loans, machinery, tools, equipment, etc.
Yeah, I mean, most deals are cashless, debtless, okay? Where there would be, they would handle all the debt and take all the cash, okay? Right. Now, Adam, I want your take on this. I mean, most, so like there was a printing company I was trying to buy, and what happened was I structured the whole deal, and then they sold it to somebody else on my structure because the only thing I wouldn't do was take over the loans of their equipment. And they found someone to take over loans of their equipment. And I said to them, oh, well, that buyer is not going to be able to make the business work because it was that detrimental to the business. And sure enough, that buyer was very upset about 9 months later. And now if there's, what do you think, Adam? I mean, what he's talking about is like, if I have a fleet of trucks, okay, let's say I have 12 cement trucks and I own 6 of them, and the other 6 have varying degrees of loans. Like, you need that infrastructure, and it's kind of a long-term loan. What would you say to that?
I would quote Walker. I would say it depends.
Yeah, right.
Every deal is different. I mean, I would say though, 95% of the time we ask the sellers to come debt-free.
Yes, exactly.
That's how the business is being priced and sold and marketed. And so if they have equipment loans on those 6 cement trucks, either they're going to have to take proceeds and clear those out, and the bank's typically going to want that.
Yeah.
And so occasionally we've transferred a forklift because it was through a lease to purchase to buy and things of that nature.
Leases I usually see. I usually see transfer because it's not, it's not. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to like capital expenditures, it's usually cashless, debtless. The only exception to that would be, and this is part of what makes this market so inefficient. But the only exception to that would be like a seller who's ready to sell, but the numbers don't make sense unless someone's willing to take over this loan over here, right? Yep. And so that's the case where they might be talking, let's just say with a broker or you directly, okay? And it's kind of like, hey, I want to do this because it's the right time for me to sell, but the only way I can say yes is if this happens, right? And Adam, to your point, it should directly impact the valuation of the company.
Correct.
Because it's an undercurrent on cash flow.
Correct.
So,